All right, welcome everybody back to the Big Douglas Show. Usually, this is Draft on Tap Wednesdays. We'll do a little bit of draft today, but we're right in the middle of the first week of free agency, so why not get right to it? As always, Adam Aniba is here from the Burgundy and Gold Report. Adam, what's happening? How are you?
Good. It's about what we expected. A pretty quiet free agency, but that's nothing new.
At least we're not having to deal with the Aaron Rodgers,
Yeah.
which is becoming crazier by the moment. And Mark Tyler's with us from Hogs Haven, man. I appreciate you joining us. Getting your
Yeah, good to be on again.
Our schedules worked out right, but always glad having you on for sure.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Gentlemen, and Mark, I guess we'll start with you first. What any big surprises so far in free agency for you?
Well, I think my biggest surprise probably hit yesterday when we lost Mascow. And I think that was, Mascow was a really big name here for a long time, big name in the league, actually a guy that was, incredibly, well represented and well respected around the NFL. So that kind of took me by surprise when, just a week ago, he was at the combine and sat in on every one of those offensive line interviews. So for me, that was a shocker. I mean, I don't know if we can talk about that in the context of free agency, but it happened yesterday in the midst of everything after we had gotten two signings the day before on the offensive line. So I thought that was pretty unique and pretty eye-opening, to tell you the truth.
We've been we haven't had much, but the organization has been fortunate with offensive line coaches for the past 15, 20 years. They can at least say that. Adam, do you think that he makes a great point about losing the offensive? And listen, Mascow is well respected, and that line, although dipped last year, had been pretty good while he was here. And do you think this has more to do with the philosophy of what their running style will be for next year?
I do think it's about philosophy, but again, I agree with Mark. The timing's a little unusual because, to go through this whole process, combine this, and then do it. But who knows exactly what the kind of discussions are. Sometimes it might just take a little time for Bieniemy. Maybe he had a couple conversations and just said, this is not going to work. And that's understandable because unlike before, we're going to give the OC the actual power to not just be the play caller, but actually run the offense, being the assistant coach. And it sounds like he's going to have full reign over that side of the ball. So to me, a little unusual, but I get it because, again, you can't expect that EB with that quick amount of time is going to know he's sold, or they just have other people in mind.
Yeah, it's been like a month, and it's interesting. One thing I will say, I'm still not sure whether I'm sold on Ron Rivera, the head coach, but I like Ron Rivera, the delegator, and I think he does a good job of that. I think you see him. The more and more comfortable he gets in that role, because remember, he didn't have that role with Carolina, right? I mean, I think that's one of the reasons that he took this job, knowing what he was getting himself into, was the fact that he was going to have so much control over the day-to-day operations. And I kind of appreciate that this far in, you actually are seeing the vision with which he delegates, because a man without confidence doesn't hire Eric Bieniemy as the offensive coordinator, right? That's like putting the backup quarterback in that has significant chance of beating the starting quarterback. You only do that if you're confident in the starting quarterback. We'll call that a segue. Mark, were you surprised? It sounds like they were in at $5 million for Heineke. He gets $6 million. It sounds like, is pretty much the base there in Atlanta. Nobody's arguing over $1 million, I don't think. So to me, this felt more like one way or the other, whether it was him or the organization, somebody wanted this to happen because the money was not that far off.
No, I think when his college coach came on and did some interviews and, Ivan wrote some stuff. Yeah, he wrote some stuff last week that was pretty eye-opening in that interview process. And, Taylor's coach said some things that, I think we all thought toward the end of the year. But people were kind of taking some guesses and stabs at, why he didn't play in that Dallas game. And when it really came down to people saying, well, he wanted to give Sam an opportunity, to me, that was complete BS. Because if you're a competitor in the NFL and you're on, you're going to be a free agent, and you want to go out there and show not only your team, but other potential teams what you're capable of doing in this league, you don't kind of say, oh, by the way, we're going to let's let this young kid take this game. So there was some stuff going on behind the scenes. Whether Ron buried that relationship when he put Wentz back in over Heineke. And don't forget, I mean, people were criticizing him for that decision, but Heineke was not playing good football at that time. He went through 3 games that were pretty rough. So I think the writing was on the wall. Yeah. Both of those games, I mean, I think the writing was on the wall when he got benched, that he was not going to be back. I think I said that on a couple different platforms. I didn't see Heineke coming back regardless this year. And I know that Keim had said that they wanted to bring him back, and there was a couple other people, I think maybe JP even alluded to that at one point. But the writing was on the wall, the bed was made, and I think he was gone before free agency even opened up. Well, the tampering period opened up. Yeah.
No, I think so too. It wasn't hard to see some of the things that had been said. And to your point, when the coach dropped that bomb on him, I don't know how you would have reconciled there. So Adam, they have literally tried every way in the organization to get a quarterback. They are insisting that Sam Howell is going to get every chance going forward. It's this weird conundrum with Sam, right? It's are you going to get Sam from UNC, where everybody thought was going to be a first-round pick when he had all the weapons, or the guy that dropped to the 5th round after a year of having no weapons and having some decline? Also, I think people forget that last year with UNC, they asked him to run the ball a lot. They had totally changed that offense up, which was not showcasing him as a passer because of the lack of weapons. So which of these Hows, I mean, we know what they're banking on. What are you betting on?
Yeah, I think right now they're setting them up for success. It's remained to be seen if the offensive line is going to be good enough. That's key for me, because I think if they're going to want to, really run what his version of the West Coast, a lot of RPO concepts, things like that, this line has to be in sync, and it has to be way better. So, changing the offensive line coach, we'll see if that's going to make a difference. But I think with Hal, again, he's a guy I'm very high on. I think that he has the ability and he has the work ethic that they'll need to, at worst, I think he's middle of the pack. To say that, he's going to take him to a Super Bowl or anything early, that might be a stretch. But I think, the whole idea of the 2-to-1 run ratio, that's not going to happen. I think we'll be a little more balanced. But I think with these kind of receiving weapons, it's going to be really hard for them not to, do a lot of crossers, a lot of dink and dunks, things like that. So I think that he'll have, decent success. You mentioned it, he was forced to become a runner his final year, over 800, plus yards rushing. So I think that just adds a factor to his game. But again, former baseball player, I love how he slings it. Coming into that class, I said, I think he threw the best, touch pass in the class. So, I'll reserve a lot of other judgment, but when it comes to that, I think that is, an intangible. A lot of quarterbacks that Washington hasn't had, they're throwing the fastball. So, even the short screens were getting blown up. But no, I think he does the little things that will get this offense going. But, as much as I like Robinson, we'll see if Gibson, how this goes with his last year. I think you still need to add, a running back to this mix. I was saying for the past month, I think McKissick's going to be on the chopping block with that neck injury he was. I think for how to have success, this run game has to have success. So, I'm looking for them to, get a running back on that, that round 3, maybe to 5 range. But I think that if they continue to surround him with success, I think you'll get a good version of how.
I like that too, Adam. What do you think of McIntosh out of Georgia? He's my guy I'm targeting right now.
I like him a lot.
I know Doug likes him.
a guy that I'm highest on right now, especially after the Senior Bowl. I was watching a little bit before that, is Tajay Spears from Tulane. What I love about him is, what he'll add is in the receiving game, but he's just that quick twitch. You look at him, think he's just going to get blown up with his size, but now he can run between the tackles. So, he's just one. We talk about Chase Brown from Illinois. He's another one. There's a bunch of guys in that round 3 or 4 range that I think fit perfectly. Gibbs from Alabama, another Alabama guy. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that. So one thing this draft has, I like the late day 2, day 3 options to have a running back, but you surround it with that kind of talent, I think sky's the limit.
I'll take both the Brown boys. Take the brothers.
Yeah, legit.
Yeah, everybody. I mean, my homerism is well documented. But he can run the ball, and he's what the NFL is looking for because he can pass, catch, and pass protect. One of the good things about the Georgia running backs is, I mean, if you don't pass block, you don't play.
Yeah,
and that's even James Cook, who went to Buffalo last year. People didn't realize, and then all of a sudden he started moving up draft boards because you look at the tape, and he's out there smashing people on third down pass protection, and just so vitally important. Also, running back is one of those spots I would be drafting one every year.
I agree.
I'm not in on first round running backs. I hear a lot of Bijan Robinson unlocking the offense. I'm not into that. And I don't think I'm in for a guy like Gibbs. I'm in for a guy like Gibbs, but I think again, like you're looking in that second round range, most likely. And I'm not sure I'm in on running back in that second round range either. When we look at that first round pick, where do you guys lean towards? I know everybody talks about the cornerback and the tackle positions.
I mean, I had I want to say 6 guys that if they popped up at number 6, I would feel very comfortable picking one of those 6. I mean, my first guy is Gonzalez, but Gonzalez blew up the combine, ran a 4.38 at 6'1 3/4, and showed the length and the great on-field drills. I mean, the footwork, the smooth hips. So I don't think there's a chance Gonzalez now drops to 16. I think we're looking at the Joey Porter. I think we're looking at Witherspoon. I think the only reason Spoon may drop a little bit just because of his lack of bulk, if you want to put it that way. But he's a tremendous playmaker. So those 3 would be my cornerback choices. And then I would put in 3 offensive tackle / guard, because when I say / guard, I mean, I think of Skoronski being, that guy that could almost be a Brandon Sheriff type of player, that he could start off as a tackle, but he could also kick in the guard, and he probably would be a better guard. I'm not one of those guys, and I'll ask you guys too for your comments on this, but I'm not one of those guys that falls into the, he had 33-inch arms, he can't play tackle. I think if you have the footwork and you have heavy hands and you know how to shoot your hands in coordination with your hips and your foot, then I think you're fine. But Skoronski could be a hell of a pick. And I think there's a good likelihood that my man crush this draft is Broderick Jones, and probably Paris Johnson. But again, I unless something crazy happens, I think he's probably the first tackle off the board. So if you want my pick right now, and if I'm presented with this opportunity, I'm taking the 20-year-old Broderick Jones. If he's there, if he falls to 16, and I'm developing that 6'5", 350-pound frame who ran 4.97, who had an amazing 10-yard split, and he looked phenomenal when you were talking about on-field drills. The base that he played with, when they put him side by side and they were showing the shuffle drill with Paris Johnson, it's just a different base, and you can tell that kid plays with that base. Now, I get it. He's only had 18 starts in college. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's 18, right, Doug?
That sounds right.
But so he doesn't typically fall into that what Rivera would look for in a first-round prospect. But 2 years ago, guess who else didn't have that prototypical starting background, and that's Jamin Davis. And that's he pulled the trigger on Jamin. So you talk about you.
Is Broderick good enough to trade up for? Like if it costs you, say, a 4th-round pick next year and a 5th-round pick this year to move up 2 spots, let's say, is Broderick Jones good enough in your mind, Adam, to make that kind of move for?
Without a doubt, you're talking about fourth. You might even be talking about third round, depending on how many spots you
Right.
have to move up. But to me, there is a substantial difference. I'm really high on Oklahoma's Anton Harrison. 16 is a little high for me, though. I like that more in a trade back scenario in the 20s. If you're talking about in that top 20, talk about Skoronski. I'm still not as sold as him on the outside. Again, I
Right.
think he can be legit in the inside. So if we're talking about that early pick for a blindside protector, Broderick, if he's there, again, if you only have to move up a little bit to get him, I think without a doubt. But I'm on the same page with Mark. I think that Broderick's going to be gone. I think he'll be the first tackle off the board in the top 15. So I think what that's going to do is the same with Gonzalez at the cornerback. So I think what that's going to leave him with is the second or third rated highest corner, and same with offensive tackle. It's going to be which one they like the most, and I think what we've seen with this team, I think people just think Benjamin St. Juice and Fuller are the answers for the future. Those guys are short term no matter what. BSJ injury issues, Fuller, although he's not old, he's got a lot of wear and tear on him. So I think, a top shelf cornerback, and luckily there's a bunch of them, even if they don't go that round in the first round, there's a bunch in the second round. But like I said, that top tackle, top cornerback, wherever, whatever falls to them. But, I'm a big proponent of trading back because I really like what they did last year, how they got Dotson, how, they upgraded a lot of other positions, and we're going to see that come more to fruition this year. So I'm all for a trade back. If the top offensive tackle, top cornerbacks off the board, I'm all for moving back a couple picks.
I'm with you on that one, and I bet you they are too. This is a draft, to your point, where having an extra third, and really all the drafts, they get so deep now with all the, they're playing football year round, so guys are just like accelerating at a faster rate, which means you're finding guys all through there. You brought up the cornerback position because I think a lot of people have it penciled in there at 16. It's interesting. I don't recall groups with Ron Rivera drafting corners in the first round. In fact, remember they were the group that got rid of Josh Norman,
right?
When he wouldn't sign. It's an interesting thing with Ron and kind of defensive players that way. They picked up Cam Dantzler off of waivers. I'm assuming that you saw that.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that? Because he's only 24 years old. I thought he was going to be a stud when he came out of Clemson. I don't think, obviously, didn't get quite what the Vikings were hoping because they released him. Your thoughts on Dantzler? Because I'm a fan.
Yeah, just like the edge rushers and defensive tackles come out of Clemson, the cornerbacks have been a mixed bag too. But he was a former third rounder, 26 starts, I believe he had in Minnesota. So no, I like his upside a lot. I think that he's going to see some playing time this year, regardless of what happens. But as far as will he be a QB1, again, I think he falls in line with Fuller and BSJ. I think they have a bunch of, cornerback twos on the roster, but not that, that quite ball hawk shutdown. So I like what he can do, but again, there's some flaws to his game. That Minnesota defensive backfield just wasn't very good last year. Better years in 2021, but he played more last year, and that's when they were, I think, ranked 26th in the league in pass defense. So, the jury's out to see, how that will go. But I think that was a good add. I've liked Danny Johnson. I like him as a depth piece.
I like Danny.
Bringing him back, is he going to be the starting slot? I'd be a little concerned if we're going to go in the season. He's penciled in no matter what. I think that job has to be up for grabs because I think one thing this draft does boast is, a bunch of slot corners that they should be able to find on day 2, day 3 if they don't get that in the first round. But they have not done enough in that position. We talk about Ron Rivera, Washington in general. It's been Carlos Rogers was the last cornerback that they drafted in the first round. I think that was 2013. So that's just been way too long. Just like running back, I think cornerback, you want to try to draft one of those guys in the top 100 every year, unless you're sold that position. And Washington, that just like safety in the past, that's been a really big Achilles heel. So I think they have to address that early. Free agency. I think we've seen the names come off the board, and there's really none of those guys that I think were worth the squeeze. There were some linebackers that we saw go elsewhere for more money than expected, but I think this is a draft. Ideally, you get at least 2 cornerbacks with those top 5 picks.
Mark, are you still with us? We can't see you. You got a black screen. Nope, must not be. That's okay. Cole Holcomb moved on. Are you sad? But I mean, sad's a funny word. I don't know. We're sad. You know what I'm getting to though. Like, it's odd. He was a tackling machine.
Yep.
He played well. I was excited about him coming back. It's sad. We haven't seen the money for him yet. So we don't know exactly, unless you've seen it. I haven't seen what the numbers are for him there. But on the other hand, when he went out last year, I didn't notice like this huge drop off in the performance of the defense. So is Holcomb a young guy on the rise, and they'll be sad they don't have him, or a mid-level guy that you're looking to upgrade from anyway?
Yeah, no, I think that I don't know what to do with him at Pittsburgh, but he's not a Mike. He's not a middle linebacker. I think, he's best utilized on the weak side. And, that's what Jamin Davis's role is right now. So, Cody Barton, I just put out, an article on him after I watched some games last year. And it's like night and day. Those first 8 games to the last second half of the season, totally different season for that guy. Really liked what he was doing in coverage. Look at the Arizona game where they played him in Seattle. I think it was in October. He was running step for step with Rondale Moore, with Zach Ertz. That's what they're missing right now. So is he the answer middle linebacker? No, but he is an upgrade over Cole Holcomb. I've had, a lot of people say he's garbage, especially against the run. There's a lot of bad tape, like I said, that beginning of the year, but he wasn't getting extended starts till last year, because it was 11 starts last year. Prior to that, I think he had 3, and it was all because of injury. So I'm looking at what he's doing in coverage. That's what they're lacking big time. And Seattle was comfortable putting him in that 3-down linebacker for that last half of the season. And, they made a nice little run with him. So I like what he can do. He's a little stiff. He's not the long-term answer, but, we saw Cole in coverage. He was just getting his head spun around. So what this guy, at least Barton, can do is he is serviceable in coverage. My hope is he's just a placeholder, and they're going to get one of those, there's like 3 or 4 middle linebackers I like, from round 2 to 3 that I think that they should really target. And hopefully he's just a placeholder till then. But yeah, he's to me, he's an upgrade over Holcomb.
Mark, we were talking about the loss of Holcomb and where you see him and value him. I was surprised that the Steelers gave him 3 years. I thought maybe after he got hurt last year, somebody like the Commanders would make him sign not make him, but get him to sign a 1-year prove-it deal. Do you like the Barton signing?
As a depth signing, it was okay. I mean, it didn't wow me. It didn't knock my socks off. I don't think he's a guy that's going to come in here and make a difference on this defense. But we do need depth. We saw what happened last year when guys went down and we had to, rely on Mayo and Bostic. And that was pretty painful to watch, both of those guys in coverage. I mean, remember against Detroit, and this was before we had injury, Mayo was put in there multiple times in coverage situations. It was almost like they came in, they saw him in the game. They said, all right, we're going to run Hawkinson down the seam. He couldn't cover it. So he's sitting there. He couldn't get depth. He couldn't get the hips flipped around quick enough. So we need depth. But I wasn't wowed by that signing. I didn't think it was a great signing. I didn't think it was a terrible signing. We got him on 1 year, and if he's going to be playing some depth, he can play special teams. Good for Cody. But a guy I keep bringing up, and I think he would be good to be able to hit the reset button and come into this defense with some veterans like Jonathan Allen and Payne, and some of these guys like Fuller, and even Cam Curl, who's now taking on a leadership role, and that would be Devin Bush. I mean, that's a guy that I've been championing for. And I think when you look at Pittsburgh's defense, when it was really more gap control, that wasn't his style of play. He's more of a chase linebacker. So you put him out there and let him go sideline to sideline. He can cover. He covered well at Michigan. But I just don't think he was put in the right situation at Pittsburgh to really take advantage of his talents and skills. So I keep saying, if we want to bring in someone, the kid's 25 years old, why not take a chance on him? Maybe offer him that 1-year deal, give him some incentive that he can earn. And then if he's proven it, Ron's been the type of guy that'll actually take care of his guys when they go out and prove it on the field. So he comes in here, he works his tail off, he proves he's a good fit in this defense. That's 2 linebackers that are like 4'4" guys, freak athletes that you got flying around this defense with some big old boys up front protecting them, so you don't have linemen coming up and picking them off every play. I think that kid would fit, and I don't think you would have to break the bank for him.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting, the fan base, and you fellas know this, but the fan base is always clamoring for more linebackers and upset that the front office doesn't sign more linebackers. I wonder, part of it is they play a 4-2-5 so much that, you only have two at any time. The other one is I wonder if they are noticing and seeing and excited about the development of Jamin Davis and what he is. Where do you guys see him? I think people were surprised at the pick. Sounded like coaching staff was frustrated by the pick at some points. But when he was out, when Holcomb went down, I mean, he shined to me. I'm curious what you guys thought about Jamin Davis and his progress.
I mean, Jamin's a super athlete. He didn't get a lot of time playing the position. You come in here as a first-year rookie. They're asking him to take the green dot and play Mike, and I think that was too much for him. You should have had him on the opposite side. You should have taken the responsibility off his shoulders, let him go out there and play football, read, recognize, react. I mean, so he did a little bit better, this year. Here's where I thought we kind of dropped the ball a little bit. I think it was Philly on the Monday night game that they took the green dot away from Curl and they gave it back to Jamin. And I thought Curl, from everything that I've seen from him, he's a field general. He knows how to get guys aligned. He recognizes things quickly. I love the opportunity for him to wear the green dot and let those linebackers go out there and not have to overthink things and let them just read and react and play some football. So I thought that was a little bit peculiar. I'm not saying Jamin did a bad job because I don't know what the calls were. It seemed like we were pretty succinct on the back end. It seemed like we understood our run fits. But I really do like taking that off of his plate and giving it to a kid like Curl, who I think can handle it and I think who excels in that role.
It sounds like going into camp, it'll be Wiley at right tackle and Cosme at right guard. And I guess he's been told that and is okay. I mean, what else is he going to say, right? He's okay with it. He just wanted to know what position. And we talked about this before. I was so surprised last year. I had never in all of my life watching football seen a team rotate right tackles just seemingly because they didn't know who should be playing the positions. I mean, good for him that he kicks inside. I know, you draft him in the second round, much like Sheriff in the first round. You're hoping he can play tackle. But I think this notion that it's bad that he can't play tackle and has to play guard. I think you can see even just with our own team and the resources allocated to interior pressure, that's because I think teams realize that the guards tend to not be as good. So if you can get a guy in there, these guards are going to become more and more important as we go along with like this more focus on interior pressure. Adam, where do you see Wiley? Because I think that'll be one of the only names that people recognize that we'll probably be bringing in this offseason.
Yeah, and I've talked to a lot of people I know from Kansas City, and they say he should be playing guard. They said, he was viewed as the weak link on their offensive line. And, although he was serviceable, more than serviceable at right tackle, they say he can be excellent in guard. So I think this might be one of those scenarios. They're going to see how it goes in camp. I think for now, Pencilman is the right tackle, Cosme in the right guard. Both of those guys, are up in the air. So, worst case scenario, Wiley will kick inside and Cosme just is probably not going to have much staying power if he can't really, solidify himself inside. But I think, this is a draft with an opportunity to really beef up inside because I think, they've seen some guys that are able to do that flex position, inside out. But, there's definitely a few guys that are Ron Rivera type guys that can be those kind of flex guys. They can, Cody Mosh from, North Dakota State, I really love him. He played mostly on the outside, but when he kicked inside the Senior Bowl, he looked awesome. So they all have those options, round 3 or 4. But I think going into camp, they're really banking on Wiley being, a legit right tackle. I think he's probably one of the better ones that they've had in a while. But again, that's not saying too much. It's just, but they have to get some chemistry. They have to get it solidified. As far as Cody Barton, I keep hearing from a lot of people that he's going to challenge Rouillet, but you got two guys that are coming off, Rouillet back-to-back years, and now, Gates, who nearly lost his leg. I'm not too confident about that center position either right now. So we'll see what happens. But I think, again, this draft is going to be a big opportunity to really, I'd like to see a couple inside out guys drafted, because if anything, they need depth. But starters right now, that's also an issue.
Who do you think? How much do you think they'll allocate in the draft for the O-line? Because I'm with you. They need serious help, and they could use a upgrade over Leno. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like Leno, and he's been serviceable for us for the last couple of years. But I'm curious, how easy is it? One of those things? Can we replace Leno and move him to the right side? How easy is it to make that switch, Mark? Do you know, from left to right?
So Leno has played both in the past. I think he's a good athlete. He's got good feet. Here's my issue, and I don't want to be negative Nancy for everybody, but I see Ron going with too many guys. He's all about position versatility. Now, listen, position versatility is great when you have depth guys. You have a guy like Schweitzer who can jump in and take over. He can play center. He can play either guard. I get that. But when we're bringing in these guys and their best position is kind of unknown, I don't know. I don't feel very comfortable with that. Give me a true right tackle. Darnell Wright is a true right tackle.
Tennessee, right?
Yep.
Tennessee, yeah. West Virginia, born and raised. Super highly recruited kid. I think he was maybe a top 3 tackle in that class. Went to Tennessee. Jones, we already talked about him. He's a true left tackle. Paris Johnson, true left tackle. Even though he did play both sides and he did kick in and play a little bit of guard, but he's what you would view as a true left tackle. Give me these guys that are true positional players. I wish we would shy away from this position versatility stuff and really go out and solidify a spot. And if we're going to do that in the draft this year, that is great. But, having all this position versatility, it's like having a jack of all trades, master of none, in my opinion. And I just wish we would move away from that and really go out and get guys that are comfortable playing the position, that know how to play that position, and they played that position for a while. So they come in here and make an immediate impact.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's when you look at this current offensive line, you're absolutely right. It's guys that we still don't know what position they play, and it's frustrating, and it can't be good for anybody. I hope they spend a ton in this draft on offensive line. Real quick, I got 2 things I wanted to talk about before we head out of here. One is drafting quarterbacks in mid rounds. I mean, I know we did this with Hal, but would you draft another one like that to be the backup? Or are you more looking at a Jacoby Brissett? I've seen Bridgewater. It sounds like Cooper Rush is a guy they're interested in. Andy Dalton would have been, I guess, before he signed with the Panthers. I kind of like the idea of just drafting a guy. But
I like the draft guy too.
Way they're going to go.
Well, we need a veteran, because we don't have a veteran on this squad, so we really don't have that guy that can come in here and take over. Hey, show Sam how to be a pro. I think that's the biggest thing, is you need someone to go out there and show him how to do the things on the field and off the field to make him a pro. So I think you're going to need that veteran presence in there, whether it's a Minshew or a guy like you mentioned. I mean, we tried to pull Henny out of retirement, and he would have been a great mentor to show Sam the right way to do things on and off the field. But I think 100% that you go out there and you look at, after round 3, picking up a guy, whether it's a Hainer, whether it's the kid from BYU who has a very similar type of skill set to Howell, with a big arm and he can run. I think the kid from UCLA, a lot of people like him too, but I think he'll be a later pick, maybe like a 6th or 7th round, because he's a little bit more slight of build, but he can run, he's mobile. So I would definitely do both. And that's where I think it would benefit Sam to have that veteran presence, but also have that guy you can begin to start developing, because you never know what the future is going to hold with any of our quarterbacks on this roster.
They signed Deron Payne. We can have a debate, I guess, at another time on whether that's the appropriate way to allocate your resources, but it would make me feel less likely that Sweat will be back. Feels hard to imagine they can pay another guy on that line what would probably be $24 million by the time Sweat's up, and I'm not sure he's worth 24 unless he has a Payne-esque breakout season, which he possibly could, because he's always around the quarterback. He reminds me so much of Preston Smith, right? He's always around and affecting the quarterback, but doesn't get the sack numbers that makes people drool. So I presented, why is it like a guy like Nolan Smith off the table at 16? Like, to me, if the best two tackles are off the board and the best two cornerbacks are off the board, and Nolan Smith sitting there at 16, I would be thinking long and hard about what the future may look like with Montez Sweat possibly not getting another contract, and Chase Young, who you can't even decide whether you want to pick the fifth-year option up on. So despite what is here right now, I'd say edge rusher is going to be a problem sooner than it is later. I'm curious your thoughts on that, Adam.
Yeah, no, I would be surprised if they don't get, another edge, and probably, maybe not round one. Start to hit that second to fourth to fifth round. There's going to be a couple guys, KJ Henry, Clemson, a guy that we talked about in a past show from Georgia Tech, Keon White, guy that plays inside and outside. He kind of looks like more of the JDR kind of guys because he's on that 280 side, 6'5". I'm not sure if I haven't really seen them, both coaches in their time, really look at these smaller edge guys like you mentioned, the kid out of Georgia, because I'm not sure if that's what they're building. But I think that would be great, because I think if you have that talent inside with Allen and Payne, to have that speed guy on the outside, I've been clamoring for that. And although Sweat is that speed guy, I just don't see how you're going to be able to, no matter how well he does or Chase Young does, I don't see how either of them are back, to be honest with you. So I think you have to be thinking about that position now. Will they try to move Sweat in this draft? Probably not. I think it's a hot seat year for Ron Rivera. If it wasn't, and he could have, he knows he has 2 years or so, I think there'd be a big chance we would see Sweat be traded. But I think they're going to go all in with who they have and hopefully find some depth guys. But, I know a lot of people, especially Penn State fans, I know really want to see some more of Shaka Toney, because they think he has a lot to, bring to the table as far as, just, straight out, rush the passer, let him attack mode. But I don't think that they'll go their first round just because of the conundrum they're in right now with Young and Sweat. I think that's just not something Rivera will do.
Do you think, Mark, that they should be adding pass rushers?
So I think we should add a pass rusher. I think it's a position you should draft every year because guys are in and out. And Adam mentioned Shaka Toney. I think Shaka Toney is a really interesting case study because if you ask me, and I saw Shaka Toney play as an off-the-ball linebacker at the Senior Bowl a couple of years ago, and we saw him lock up John Bates when Bates ran, a seam, or maybe he ran a post route or something like that, and Shaka was in hip trail and was locked him down from the moment he got off the line until the moment that ball was in the air. So I know he did some work at Penn State as an off-the-ball linebacker, and talking with LeVar, I know that he had worked a little bit, on that coming into the pros. So being that he's only 6'2", he only played at Penn. He was under 240 pounds at Penn State. He was actually in the mid 230s. They listed him at 242, but he wasn't 242. He was 235 to 237. I still think he's probably under that. I would love to see them use him as an off-the-ball linebacker and maybe even walk him up on the line of scrimmage. Like, listen, Jack loves that bear defense, that bear front, but why not use an over front and walk him up like Bruce Irvin used to do in Seattle? That would make a lot of sense where you could use his pass rushing skills. Now, I'm not saying he's Micah Parsons, don't get me wrong, but if you used him that way, he has the athletic ability to open the hips and drop into coverage. He has the speed. He's a 4.5 kid, so he has the speed to go sideline to sideline. Why not give him a shot at off-the-ball linebacker, get him on the field a little bit more, and use him as a situational pass rusher from that look? I think it would make sense. Now, I know we're probably not going to see 3 linebacker sets where we see a Sam linebacker in there, but would it kill us to use him? And then you could run him up to the line of scrimmage. You can green dog him. You could cross dog him. You can do so many different things with a player like his skill set. So it baffles me why 2 former linebackers really, I think they're failing to utilize what the kid has to offer.
I do too, and I guess it's just because they have fallen in love with the new, big safety look.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they're drafting, right? That's what they're showing you. I was stunned, to your point about Chaga. I was stunned that Khalid Hudson never gets any more run, and I guess, I mean, they must not see it. He must not be doing it, but the talent is there. It seemed like when he came out of Michigan, in as far as what they wanted to do with like that hybrid, whether you call it the Viper or the big
Viper role.
Yeah. And again, a guy that just, for whatever reason, never gets on the field.
Yeah, he was a Don Brown disciple. So Don Brown, basically made that Viper role for, a player just like Hudson. So Don Brown's a great mind. He used Hudson the right way at Michigan, so Hudson blew up. Similar kid like Peppers, what you would see Peppers using. And even the way that they played Derwin James. Derwin James is playing that way too. I mean, he's playing all over the field. He can line up deep. He can come up and actually, I think he had over 800 snaps in the slot or close to the line of scrimmage in Fox last year. So that's the type of player he is. Yeah, I'm baffled too. I don't understand why Hudson is not seeing the field. He played good against Dallas when we put him in there. He showed sideline ability. So, we sat there and we went with Bostic and Mayo over him, and I think a lot of fans got upset, and rightfully so.
And final one before we get out of here. Have we finally gotten the safety positions filled? It seems like we have one and not the other. With the emergence of Forrest kind of last year, it makes me feel a little bit better about the position. Did you see enough from Forrest to make you feel comfortable with what we have back there?
I don't know. Comfortable is not the word, but I'm comfortable with him coming into the season, man in one side and Curl on the other side. And saying that, I really like Percy Butler when he was coming into the, I really, special teams is something he was known for, but I think that that's a guy you're going to see them really get more on the field more. I think that was, not that he can really man that slot spot, but I think that's why McCain became expendable too, because I think they really have hopes to get Butler more on the field. Same with Khalid Hudson, they brought him in, will they try to move him into that big linebacker nickel role? But I think for right now, this is the best situation the safety positions have been in quite a long time. So I think that, you always got to continue to build depth. We saw that they tendered, I'm blanking right now, Revo. So, they want to bring him back. They have Butler. So right there, that's 4 with those guys. So I think that they're pretty good, but I'd like to see them get a guy, maybe, a cornerback flex, safety guy that they can maybe develop, because I always want to see them go, because if you're going to just put, all your eggs in that basket, I'm not sure. And then, we're talking about Curl, coming up on a new deal. Like, if they don't do anything for the rest of this offseason, I hope that they can just, figure out a way to get him locked in, because I think he's really key to this defense, as Allen and Daron Payne were. But, yeah, this safety position's in pretty good hands right now.
Well, there's a guy out there named Gardner Johnson.
Yes.
Just saying, he's only 25 years old. He's from a division rival.
He's a beast. I was mad. I was mad when he left the Saints and ended up on the Eagles, because he's a baller.
Oh, he's awesome.
Yeah, he's not a big kid, but, man, he could take over that role that we saw we saw what's his name play last year in the slot. I think he can. He's a do it all player, and I don't know. I guess he probably want a pretty decent contract, and I know he's probably not looking to sign any type of 1-year deal. He's probably looking for a 4 to 5 year deal. And do we have enough money, and will we bring a kid like that in? But when we talk about position versatility, he has it. He has what this defense seems to look for. So, and we have a need.
Well, it's only 1 week into free agency, not even a full week. And I think we'll see, the next week is usually when Ron and company do their real work. So it'll be interesting to see what they add. Fellas, I appreciate you hopping on doing this today. Had a lot of fun with you guys.
Yeah, it was good chatting. Absolutely. Always a pleasure.